No one's looking at me. No one cares. I'm just another dude running around. My parents still don't really know what I do because I don't really know what I do because I'm in the process of doing it. And then I relax and I just get into my daily routine, and I don't worry if I'm going to think about any other really deeply useful ideas for humanity between now and when I die. I just feel really grateful that I have the devotion to myself and other human beings to show up sparkling every single morning, knowing that statistically today is almost certainly not the day.
In this episode of The Little Black Book, I'm joined by David Bartholomeusz. David is a serial entrepreneur who has a passion for volunteering. He uses his 20 years experience to empower entrepreneurial leaders and build communication habitats in which communities thrive. He's been an empowering global instructor, coach for Focal Point International, a company which specialises in coaching and training individuals and organisations, and is also the entrepreneur in residence for ThinkLab, the University of Adelaide's startup incubator supporting emerging entrepreneurs. In January of this year, he created Practice Protect. The Practice Protect program provides one unique, smooth and achievable process that handles all the major legal, complicated issues for medical practice. In this episode, David shares about his relationship with his grandfather, who constantly challenged him to be better and do what he loved. He talks about the structures that he has established, that he and his family use to set goals, create accountability, and modify behaviours. David also shares about his evolution in business in the entertainment industry to be a creator of value for others through his strategic consulting work.
Welcome to The Little Black Book, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs who provide their first-hand experiences to help others learn and grow. This podcast is brought to you by Altitude Advisory. Altitude Advisory is a modern business advisory firm helping business owners build a better business for a better life.
G'day, I'm David Bartholomeusz. Welcome to the Little Black Book podcast.
Mate, favourite movie of all time?
My favourite movie of all time, potentially awkwardly, not for me, but for others, is the Beauty and the Beast live action film that came out a few years ago.
Okay.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But I had a dream about Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
And then I woke up the next morning and I saw this live action film.
Yeah.
I didn't know about it. I just saw it. I think a bus went past and there was a thing on the back. I'm like, I've got to go and see that film because I had a dream about it.
Yeah.
So I went to what I usually do, which is a Tuesday matinee at the Nova Cinemas.
Yeah.
And I was the only person in the theatre.
Yeah.
And I just cried the whole time.
Yeah.
Like at the start, there's just like a flower that comes out. I just started crying and I cried for the whole movie.
Yeah, okay.
And at the end of the movie, I didn't realise, but there was a couple in the cinema that had come in before me and they were in the dark.
Right.
And at the end of the movie, they came up to me and said, "Are you okay?" Because I'd been crying for the whole movie.
Yeah, okay.
It just affected me so deeply.
Yeah. Was there any particular elements that you think in reflection created that emotional response?
Well, I've always been ensconced with the idea of the bodily and the spiritual part inside us and how those two things interact with each other. And for me, the whole la belle la bête sort of narrative has always been interesting to me as a Renaissance construct, I guess.
Yeah.
And I go and see these art exhibitions about that time and how society was changing and all that sort of stuff. But I just didn't get how much of that story shows up in my life.
Yeah, okay.
And the weirdest thing started happening after that was that I'd been constantly having dreams before that about that whole sort of story arc.
Yeah.
And about a week afterwards, I had a lucid dream where you can sort of interact with the dream and talk to it and ask it questions and all that sort of stuff. And I asked the dream and I said, "Why do you keep wanting me to connect with the beast?" And the dream just started laughing and replied back and said, "We don't want you to connect with the beast. We want you to connect with Belle." And I was like, oh, well, that's not anywhere near as tough and masculine and as exciting as I thought. And so it really took me on a line of inquiry into, I guess, the feminine side of myself and how that shows up.
Yeah, okay.
Which has been, since then, it's been been amazing, actually.
Yeah.
To really get that. There's a whole social construct of feminine, but then there's my experience of feminine. It's a totally different thing. And so, it doesn't surprise me in hindsight how that film affected me.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was just to feel this whole outpouring of my body. It was literally out of control for 2 hours.
Yeah.
It was just phenomenal.
Fascinating.
It's fascinating to me. I'm just like a dude from 𝗟𝗶𝘁𝗃𝗧, bawling my eyes out in a cinema, just going, what is happening to me? And it's just been it started off a journey that I just didn't expect.
And with a couple of randos in the cinema scratching their head and saying, is this bloke okay?
I felt so bad. You know, they're on their Tuesday date day.
Yeah.
And I just cried through the whole movie.
Mate, what about a book then that you've read or an audio book that you've listened to that either as a young adult or a child impacted you?
There's a book that it quite possibly saved my life, but that might be a bit dramatic because it's hard to know, right?
Yeah.
But when I was a teenager, I was gifted this book called The Plague by Albert Camus, or as I like to call him, 𝗟𝗶𝘁𝗁, because I'm from 𝗟𝗶𝘁𝗃𝗧 and that's how we talk.
Yeah.
I was, I think, a third-year university student before one of my friends politely tapped me on the shoulder and said, that guy that you like, he's French. But I read that book and I'm like, oh, it's not that good. But I like the writing style.
Yeah.
And so I asked around and someone said, read this book, The Myth of Sisyphus. And I read the first page and I was just immediately wrapped with this book.
Yeah.
And then I started to sort of get more interested in Camus and his philosophy and his approach and his literary style and just the ability for someone to take the whole nonsense of life and essentially codify it, but then present it in a way that for me as a teenager, I could immediately understand.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, I'm vaguely in agreement with a bunch of the stuff that's said, but the idea that someone would take all of this stuff that's going on inside of them, then codify it, and then uncodify it and turn it back into a narrative that anyone can understand, like that level of literary grace, I guess I would call it. Someone being willing to go to that level to take something inside them that's all jumbled up, unjumble it, but then rejumble it so it's digestible. Yeah. It's just such a gracious thing for a human being to do.
Yeah.
I was just so deeply grateful for, I just imagine how much, I often think how many cigarettes were smoked in the middle of the night over creating something that digestible and yet that complex. Yeah. You know, for me, it's just such a gift of the human spirit to be able to do that.
Okay. So, I mean, what were some of the learnings or, you just described that codifying element. What were some of the things that you were able to take out of that and translate or help clarify in your own, upbringing or, business life that's since helped?
It gave me a direct experience of something that my grandfather taught my dad and my father was trying to teach me. We have this sort of mantra in our family, well, amongst us anxious men, to ask ourselves how much it's going to matter in a year. And it's such a simple thing to say, but the moment that I'm not getting what I want in the moment, all bets are off. Yeah. The world is terrible. I'm cursed. People are against me. I just turn into this paranoid freak. Yeah. And this ability to just relax and take a step back and actually objectively have that quieter part of me ask my ego, really, seriously, brass tacks, how much is this going to matter in a year? Yeah. I really feel like that book gave me an imaginative foundation for thinking about that question, how much is this going to matter in a year? Yeah. To put all of my life into context. And I think thinking about it now, because I'm not really thinking about it until you actually asked me the question, is a guy called Warren Rustand who put this sort of whole life picture in front of me and said, Dave, you're trying to become a billionaire before you're 75. No one really sustainably, predictably becomes a billionaire before they're 75. There are plenty of golden unicorns out there because there's 8 billion people. But if you really want to get to a level where you're adding so much value to the lives of other human beings that they would trust you directly to interact with any amount of money without having a government interfere, which for me, that's the point. It's not really about having a lot of money. Yeah. You you're going to take some time on that. You're not going to get good at that by the time you're 25.
Yeah.
You're not even going to get good at that by the time you're 50.
Yeah.
You might start getting good at it by the time you're 75. So the first trick is to figure out how you're going to still be healthy and able at 75.
Yeah.
The second thing is to then break your life up into some stages and get really clear about how much time you actually have. And the third thing is to let go of the fear that you're going to die before you get there.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you're going to die before you get there. Because that's what being a human being is about.
Yeah.
Is that we're all getting somewhere on a journey, and at some point it's cut short, you know, and you never really get to do everything that you want to do. I know that a lot of older people don't feel like that.
Yeah.
They can happily sit back and say, I'm really glad with the legacy that I've left and I've really enjoyed my journey and now I'm having a good time, but I feel like I've lived a great life.
Yeah.
But for me as a younger person, really, I think that book allowed me to put conversations like that from my mentors into a proper perspective and have a creative and imaginative framework for the sorts of systems and processes that are going to give, I guess, a creative capitalist a good life.
Yeah. And I think you make a good observation there, you know, and that key word that you just used was perspective. And you know, perspective is that, you know, there are so many things that are going on at any given point in time, and does it really matter? And you know, you only control what you can control. You know, forget about the things that you can't control, and you know, keep pushing yourself forward to be better and improve. And you know, like you said, you know, does it really matter? So I mean, I think that, you know, that perspective word that you just used there, I think is really relevant in relation to that. So mate, you actually started your business career in the entertainment industry. Now you've transitioned through various things over the time. Tell us how, you know, basically you got started in that sector and how then your business journey, I guess, has evolved, you know, over time.
It's really interesting. I think people know you by your first business that is public, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I had a number of businesses that weren't noticeable to other people before the entertainment business. My first business that was not terrible was actually a door-to-door knocking service. So we would go from door to door and bang on people's doors and ask them the question, does your microwave leak microwaves? And this was when microwaves first went mainstream. So, you know, like 2000 years ago. And the way we got started was I was in a $2 store and I was looking through all the things for $2 because that's about all the money that I had when I was at uni.
Yeah.
And I saw this microwave monitor
that
would check if your microwave was leaking microwaves. I'm like, that's stupid. That's not $2.
Yeah.
Because I was a science student. I'm like, you can't do science for $2. Yeah. And so I bought one and I took it back to the Earth Sciences guys because they had all the proper equipment.
Yeah.
And I said, this has got an Australian standard sticker on the back. I'm pretty sure it's dodgy. Can you just tell me whether or not this is actually a working microwave monitor? And I went back and saw them about a week later and they said, actually, this is legit. Measuring microwaves at this level, like this is basically measuring whether there's a serious leak or not.
Yeah.
It actually is very, very simple.
Yeah.
And so then that's when my entrepreneurial spirit kicked in.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't think anyone is going to go to a $2 store to buy a microwave monitor because they just can't be stuffed. What about if I just knock on people's doors and offer for $5 cash on the spot to go and monitor their microwave?
Yeah.
See if it leaks microwaves, just to give them that peace of mind.
Yeah.
And so I started knocking on people's doors to see if it would work. And interestingly, a lot of people were really up for that.
Yeah.
You know, particularly it was really good because I got to talk to the customer right there on the doorstep. They didn't want to talk to me. I didn't want to beat around the bush. I just wanted to see if they wanted the help or not. But I got to understand that actually certain people did worry about their microwaves. And also I started asking questions like, did you buy the microwave new or is it secondhand? And some of those sorts of questions. And have you moved house recently? And those sorts of things. And that sort of got us into a conversation.
Yeah.
And then I was able to set their mind at ease. And also sometimes I found microwaves that really did leak.
Yeah.
And it felt great to say to that person, go on, but get yourself a new microwave.
Yeah.
And if you want to get it repaired, here's a repair place. I don't take an extra charge for that sort of stuff. So that was sort of how I got started. And I'm really glad that I did because it's taught me my number one rule of business, which is really how I built out the entertainment company, all the other companies afterwards, which is until I've personally spoken to 1,000 frontline customers, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's just a staple for me in establishing my businesses.
Yeah.
Is talking to 1,000 customers.
Yeah.
And just getting a deeper understanding of what their pain points are,
working
and
out
what we
they
can
need.
do to serve that.
Yeah.
And so for me, actually, that didn't come from the entertainment company, but in the entertainment company, I was able to take that to the next level and leverage a whole bunch of people and put them on the front doors of nightclubs to say to people going to nightclubs, why do you come here? Why would you come here as opposed to somewhere else?
Yeah.
And we got a really deep understanding of that behavioural side of people.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. You just mentioned about understanding customer needs. And I think, in the current environment, that's more critical than ever. And, there's a guy out of the US, guy by the name of, John DeJulius, who is, I guess, an subject matter expert in this whole customer experience, in this customer journey, and understanding their needs and understanding how you can solve their problems and providing value is just critical in this whole, really competitive environment that we're in at the minute. It doesn't matter whether you're in e-com or whether you're in frontline, hardcore, retail, traditional retail. That customer experience, customer journey is just so important. So you learnt that as at a really early age, and have flowed that through. So tell us about some of those experiences then in terms of how you've been able to leverage that to help you scale and grow, the businesses that you've been in, perhaps starting with the entertainment side of things.
With the entertainment company, I think the first insight that we got was that people gather for a sense of community.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems obvious when you say it, but the whole way that entertainment and hospitality was being done sort of 20 years ago just didn't reflect that.
Yeah.
The game was to move as much alcohol as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you make a business like that work.
Yeah.
This is before pokies even.
Yeah.
Was you just have to move alcohol.
Yeah.
And so the focus was on how do we create a bar that can move alcohol efficiently?
Yeah.
And that's, I started off working in bars as a bartender, and all of my training was how do we move alcohol over the bar this way and money over the bar this way as quickly as possible so that we can maximize the profitability of this bar.
Yeah.
And coming from studying behavioral science at university, it didn't take me long to look at that and just go, this whole thing is backwards. There's no focus on why the customer is engaging in that behavior. And one of the things which I think got me out of entertainment was the whole alcohol piece.
Yeah.
Was that alcohol made it really easy for me as a researcher of humans to see how humans behave, potentially at their worst, or at their worst in terms of their most primal in decision making. And so I don't regret filling people up with alcohol for years, because it allowed me to really sort of get under the kimono of how a human being really operates when they're being primal in that way. But the other side of it is that it really showed me that humans, to a large extent, aren't making decisions that they think that they're making. And that is something that I think has troubled me ever since. And really, I think forms the foundation of a lot of my other businesses since then, is to try to create a better framework for myself as an entrepreneur to deliver deep value for the human rather than just get the sale, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Really looking at how do I serve the totality of that human, but in order to do that, I have to get them to yes. And so I'm constantly caught in this internal dichotomy, because if you want something sold, get me to do it.
Yeah.
I'll figure out not just how to sell it, I'll figure out how to sell it, and then I'll figure out how to turn that into a process, and then I'll create a support structure for 100 other people to go and sell that en masse.
Yeah.
It's no issue.
Yeah.
But the thing for me is that a business that's going to sustainably maintain market share has to be adding 10 to 100 times value on whatever you're charging on that.
Yeah.
And the customer doesn't know what that 10 to 100 times value looks like for them. And so really, I think that's the thing that I love most about being in business, and what subsequent businesses have been all about, is trying to understand how I can show up both in compelling people to action, because without a credit card, there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
But on the other side, how can I then use that faith that that person has shown in me and this company to create a 100 times leverage on their investment?
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit that fascinates me the most at the moment, is how can I build up better customer feedback structures and better lines, deeper lines of inquiry with customers about where the real value is.
Yeah.
Henry Ford said the obvious, however many years ago, if I'd asked my customer what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses.
Faster horse.
But that's really still the thing that fascinates me most in business, is I'm pretty confident with I can get people to say yes and we can get started, but really trying to figure out the communication systems and the environments that really pull for little niche demographics really opening up.
Yeah.
And saying, this is what it feels like to be us.
Yeah.
This is what it feels like to be me. This is the stuff that I'm so resigned and cynical to asking for that I've stopped asking, that I've forgotten to even ask for. Because really for me, that's where the deep value piece exists to create the businesses of the future.
Yeah.
Yes, we can leverage with technology. Yes, we can leverage technology with people to a certain extent. Yes, we can leverage people with capital to a certain extent. All of those things are true.
Yeah.
But to me, none of that's creative.
Yeah.
That's all just best practice as a business owner. That's all stuff that I can learn from a book.
Yeah.
But every single time something out there in reality changes for people, that's for me the entrepreneurial opportunity.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a time of great change at the moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Social change, the physical changes that we're seeing with COVID are just an amplifier to that, but there's huge social change going on underneath.
Yeah.
And also then the technological change in terms of technology uptake that we're seeing on top of all that. For me, I only see a sea of opportunity here to really get level with the customer and just ask them.
Yeah. So, and that's a really interesting thing because, we quite often talk about customers don't always really know what the value is or what they need before they've actually got it. And you mentioned Henry Ford, Steve Jobs was another, great, proponent of that. iPhones, iPads, all those sort of technology advancements that change the way we interact and connect. How do you then draw that back with an idea to get that in front of somebody and really be able to establish that value or that that deep connection with them to create that leverage? I mean, what's some of the stuff that you do that?
It's really fun in the businesses at the moment. So we've got some education businesses, some legal businesses, and some risk management stuff going on at the moment. And time again, I find myself on a call with a customer. And the question that I've been asking out of all the questions, which has really been a foundational shift for me, is to ask the customer how much value the experience that we're about to create for them is going to generate for them between now and when they die. And my team go crazy because sometimes they watch or they listen to the recordings back. The first question that I ask a customer is, how long are you intending to live for? And they're like, forever. Yeah. Because that's the natural intent of most human beings. They don't say it, but I start them on this journey of, I'm here to serve the whole of your life. And I actually really try and get them into a level of sharing where they can actually level with themselves and me about how long they actually think they're going to live and what that's going to look like between now and when they die.
Yeah.
And if I'm not entertaining a conversation with them around how can I leverage you as a human being using what we're developing between here and when you die, then I'm just not interested in delivering you anything.
Yeah.
Because it's just boring and it's just uncreative. And in being able to show up for another human being in that environment and actually take them on that journey about what is my life going to look like between here and when I die, and how much is my involvement with the journey that's on offer here going to leverage my life as a human being, this one life that I know for sure that I have, then I just kind of lose interest, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so really, for me, it's a delicious thing to talk to a customer, and I really acknowledge that with the customer a lot as well. And I think they appreciate that.
Yeah.
The thing for me as well is every time I talk to a customer and I can go deep like that, then it opens up creativity within me at a different level. Yeah. And that's really where I'm getting so much satisfaction out of being an entrepreneur now, is being able to show up directly in the coalface for a customer in their moment of pain, but then take them so much deeper into that pain for them to realize that underneath all of these sort of surface wants and needs, there are these deep, deep desires inside them that actually can be satisfied, and that companies can do that.
Yeah.
Can actually really satisfy these deeper desires for people. Also, once again, using quite simple methods. Like in the entertainment company, the thing that we realized was the deepest thing that we could satisfy with a really surface intervention was to empower someone to be a leader of their peer group on their birthday. And it sounds like the tritest thing, but for a young person who is just sort of an average member of a social group who's just come out of school and is about to emerge into the world and sort of in that adolescent changeover phase, they've constantly been subject to the cool kids at school.
Yeah.
They're now going out into this big, terrifying world, and they're just kind of lost in this sort of in-between place.
Yeah.
And the birthday is such an important ritual.
Yeah.
It really is a grounding ritual for someone in that age. And on their birthday, to be able to show up really powerfully in an experience that's really memorable and fun for their peer group, and to be seen just for that night as the leader of that group and the creator of that experience, has an impact on that person, which from hundreds, if not thousands of feedback reports from people that stop me in the street because they recognize me or things like that.
Yeah.
It's foundational in their evolution as a human being.
Yeah.
And so this is really what I love about the creativity for me of being sort of, I guess, a more consciously creative capitalist and really thinking about how am I going to add the most value as a creative in the capitalist space.
Yeah.
Is starting to get some of that feedback from people and saying, you really took the time, like 𝗟𝗶𝘁𝗃 did in his writing, to actually take all of that chaos, all of those wants and needs, and get to the deeper desire, to then codify a structure by which that desire, that deeper desire, could be met or nourished. And then you created a way for me to get back to joy very quickly and efficiently in reality.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the real driver for me as an entrepreneur. The thing that I love to do most is that creative capitalism of really getting right down underneath the hood and taking the extra 3 years it takes to gather up enough customer data to build something that gives a deep impact experience like that.
It's interesting, mate, as you're talking about this stuff and your experiences and what motivates you. And there's a real sense of value to others and this social conscience. And, you mentioned the social conscience of getting out of the entertainment business attached to the alcohol side of things, and then 𝗟𝗶𝘁𝗁 learnings from that book. Is that something that's come out of family, or is it just something that's evolved for you? Like, where's that real sense of value to others, or social conscience or care for others to make their lives better? Where's that origin from for you?
I think a lot of it has come from my mentors, the refinements around it, but I do know that there's a piece of it that came from my dad's dad. Every time we went there for the Christmas holidays, we drove over to Canberra, 8 of us in a Toyota Land Cruiser from 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗃 to Canberra, sleeping on the side of the road and doing all that sort of stuff. And we'd get there and we'd stay there for 2 months. 8 people invading my retired grandpa's house, which had 1 extra bedroom as well as his. It was bedlam. I don't know why he ever agreed to it. But we'd drive all day and all night, and we'd get there the next morning, and we'd arrive, sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning. And I would just be dying. My dad would always worry and say, why aren't you going to go to sleep? I say, I want to be awake when we get there, and I want to be on the ball because I know what Grandpa's going to ask. And Pop would shuffle out in his slippers, and he'd see me because I'd be the awake one. And he would say this question every year: what do you want to be when you grow up? And that for 2 months, we would dive into this question of, you only get one life. What are you going to do with it? And every year I'd have this different, well thought out, I'd have, 10 months of the year to figure out this answer unequivocally. I'm going to be this. And he would never, ever accept my answer. He just kept hammering me. And I would always get upset and say, why are you hammering me on this? Why is it important? And he would say the same thing over and over. Do what you love and you never work a day in your life. And that's just stayed with me, and it's been the guiding light for me. Like, I don't really consider myself an entrepreneur. I consider myself a devotee of that mantra, which is just do what you love. And time again, I've just found that when I'm doing what I love, that's where I come up with those creative strokes of genius that are just massively leverageable in an entrepreneurial way. So I think there is that, but it's the mentors that have really given me a vehicle by which I can turn that into a reality of a lifestyle. Of being able to take those genius ideas and then take them back to a consumer and have them say, that's not it. And also to build the patience and resilience to say, Dave, you only actually need to have a good idea one day in 4,000, and that's perfectly sufficient for you as a creative entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So every single day you're going to wake up and you're going to do this exact process. You're going to go through your whole day on this process, creative process rails. And at the end of the day, your day doesn't finish there. You set up your sleep so that your sleep is the most creative part of your entire day. I do more creative and productive work that makes a difference out here in the world when I'm asleep than when I'm awake. And having that discipline to wake up 3,999 days out of 4,000 with a variance of like 4,000, like it might be 20 years before I come up with another good idea. I might go through the whole rest of my life and not come up with another truly good idea.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily, I used to think it was discipline, but for me it feels more like devotion.
Yeah, okay.
I'm much more interested to die having searched every single day, the whole of myself and the whole of every person I interact with for something of deep value than to have stuffed around in my email for all of those days.
Yeah.
And so really it's the mentors that have given me the confidence to do that and say, Dave, every time you do this well, another zero goes on the end of your net worth. And that's going to happen between 0 and 15 more times before the end of your life. Don't rush it.
Yeah.
You can't rush this process. Just keep showing up 100% authentic and in the moment with real people with real needs.
Yeah.
Be really clear about the specific sub-niches that you're working with at any given time on that. And say no to almost every opportunity and just choose the ones where you can really show up 100% in your zone of genius. And over the course of your life, you'll add between exponential value and zero value.
Yeah.
But you'll maximize your value to the human race using that method than any other method.
Yeah.
And now that I know that, I can't unknow it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get upset because I see other people just sort of getting on with the normal day-to-day of life and looking at me and going, oh, Dave hasn't come up with a good idea for a while. But then I actually realize no one's looking at me. No one cares. I'm just another dude running around. My parents still don't really know what I do because I don't really know what I do because I'm in the process of doing it. And then I relax and I just get into my daily routine and I don't worry if I'm going to think about any other really deeply useful ideas for humanity between now and when I die. I just feel really grateful that I have the devotion to myself and other human beings to show up sparkling every single morning, knowing that statistically today is almost certainly not the day.
Yeah. But you just mentioned a bit about your structure and routine and you describe it as devotion, not discipline, but you do go through really, I'll call it a structured process in the majority of elements of what you do, from sleeping to the way you structure your meals to your exercise to your thought process, all those sort of things. How important is that structure then in terms of then creating a framework for success for you? And can you maybe share more about some of your some of those structures that you've got in place?
I was in a monastery in Thailand with my kids, just as a tourist. And I was showing the kids all this Buddhist stuff and I was pretending I knew stuff about it. I was just basically, you make up stuff for your kids.
As you do when you're a dad.
They're asking questions. They're, 7 and 9.
Yeah.
At that stage, they were 5 and 7. So the questions were even more incomprehensible and awesome.
Yeah.
And a monk started following us around at a respectful distance. And we stopped at the foot of this massive big Buddha statue in the middle. And I'm saying to my kids, there are a whole lot of people that just sit in this space and they just think about all the things that we don't have time to think about because we're getting on with making the world function. And it's a job. Being a monk is like a job. And they were asking questions about, would you ever have liked to be a monk? And I said, I actually had designs on being a priest when I was younger, but it just didn't seem anywhere near like the amount of fun that I wanted to have. And the monk came up and he started speaking and his English was not bad.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "You're a holy guy." And I'm like, oh, that's probably a bit strong. And I started sort of wriggling out of it because he's sort of looking at me really intensely as this sort of middle-aged monk who's clearly had a lot clearer of a think about what's actually going on here than I have while I've been mucking around in nightclubs and helping lawyers and all that sort of stuff. And he says, no. it takes more for the monk to live outside the monastery than inside. You're a monk who has chosen the direct path. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. You do all the things that we do in here, but you do them out there where everything is in your face. The reason a monk comes in here is to have some sort of support and framework or structure so that they could go back out into the world. The purpose of the monastery is to go back out into the world. And he put his hands together and he said, I respect you so much for doing all of this that we do out there every day in the world. He said, you get so much more from doing it that way than the way that we do it. I just thought, oh, that's a nice thing to say, but that's really stuck with me. That conversation. The conversation might have gone for a minute and then he just walked off and left me with the shattered remains of my life. But I could tell that he was in earnest and it really affected me. And so I think that's been a really big thing for me, is to get that you don't have to be quiet to get quiet inside. And that there's so much going on inside my mind that I just don't understand. And that's, when I went into that movie and just started crying, I had a foundation that allowed me to express myself like that. And that's, I guess, what had been cultivated and what's allowed me to be able to continue to show up for customers and for staff and for these little tribes of people. I'm so disinterested in growing a big company as well. And the moment something gets good enough to be a proper company, someone else can have it, basically, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not interested in growing these big things. I'm interested in discovering these deeper little things that really can leverage out and help 10 to 100,000 people. I can't even remember what the question was, but that story just came to mind. Do you want to?
No, it was just about your routines, and your disciplines to show up every day and just follow that path, and to give you clarity then of thought. So what's some of those? I'll call them habits, but what's some of those habits that you implement every day and follow every day?
Now I remember why I was explaining the story, because
discipline of the monk.
Before I met that monk, I was pretty process oriented in terms of having an incredibly structured morning routine, evening routine, and sleep routine. Sort of that whole evening to morning piece was just an absolute ritual, but I didn't understand why. But after I spoke to that monk, I just got super clear that within that structure, I was able to integrate everything that was happening to me during the day, and that it was absolutely fundamental for me to build out routines that work for me. And so people, say to me, Dave, I want to do your routine. And I said, well, that would work really well if you were me. But I don't really like to tell other people how to figure out how to optimize their functioning. The thing that I love doing, which I recommend to all and sundry, is every 12 months, I go away with a group of people that I trust, and I spend a week really going deep with what are my dreams. And this is where I get really clear, what do I want? And what do I need? And they're all the surface presentations of my life. And being in reality and being really open about that. And, this is awkward stuff. This is thinking about all how I feel inadequate in the nude and, all these normal human things, and how I feel like I haven't done enough as an entrepreneur. All of these, I want people to respect my genius as an entrepreneur and those sorts of things. I get those wants and I take a week to figure out the desires underneath. And then I say, what's the dream? What is the dream that I have in these different areas of my life where these deeper desires sit? And I map out all those dreams, and then I pick the top 12 dreams in my life. And for each of those dreams, I figure out exactly what I would do if I had a magic wand that would make that dream come true. And then, because I've got 12 and there's 12 months in a year, I just take note. This is the dream area. This is exactly what waving a magic wand and making that dream would come true would look like. But then every month I take one of those and I say, all right, throw away the magic wand. This is what the end state, this is what your dream life looks like. What is one behavior that if you embedded it into your native routine of your life that you did without effort, and you kept doing this every single day until now, from between now and when you died, it would actually move you most directly towards that dream life. And every month I just come up with a new behavior.
Yeah.
Every 7 days, I come back to it, and every single day I track that in my diary. I take one action that's a behavior that moves me toward that better self.
Yeah.
And after a month, then I leave it for a month, and after a month I check back in and see if that behavior is stuck.
Yeah.
And it's in that checking back that I actually get the most growth.
Yeah.
Because some of those behaviors stick and some of them don't. If they stick, I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
A part of this is probably going to stick with me until I die. That's basically free value that I'm now adding out there in the community without effort.
Yeah.
The second thing is after 30 days, it's embedded into my normal routine.
Yep.
So I've usually shed or gotten rid of or tuned or optimized something else to sort of make room for it. I don't start anything new, if that makes sense. I don't add anything to my life because it's already full.
Yeah.
So this has to work within to my life. But the other thing that I really love is when it doesn't work, I don't feel like I've failed because I'm now in a position to analyze the way that I went about trying to create that new behavior and learn something from it.
Yeah.
And so I never, ever fail to achieve my aim, which is to either become a better person or to become better at becoming a better person.
Yeah.
And it just takes all the stress off because I'm just like, every year you're getting 12 insights. You're either getting a personal growth or you're getting better at personal growth.
Yeah.
And all of these things are moving you apace to your best self.
Yeah.
Can you really do more than that?
No.
And then I relax
Yeah.
and I just get into the process. And that makes my life a lot easier.
Yeah. I think there's some really good insights in that, mate. And, just that whole learning from failure. I mean, I don't think you ever fail. Whether it works or it doesn't work, you always learn something out of it and you get better by doing it. And so just turning up and having a go might not always work out, but you can always take something out of that. And you really only fail when you quit. So, it's looking at it through a different lens. And I think there's some great teachings in that for others to take away and say, well, look, it's just a different lens to look at it through. Well, you haven't failed, you've just grown in a different way. So, mate, I think that's a great share. You mentioned before about saying no to stuff and how important that is. So what are the decision filters that you use when you're making a choice as to whether to go left or right at the fork in the road and saying no to stuff?
One of the big learnings I've got from my mentors is to be in the life stage that I'm in, regardless of where my net worth or my skill base is.
Yeah.
And it's something that's not obvious. Well, it certainly was not obvious to me, was that life happens in stages. And so that's the first thing, is to be honest about the life stage that I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm no longer slaying the dragon. That part of my life is over. I'm no longer a person who's going to work a 60-hour week, 80-hour week like I used to, slaying the dragon. Really, I'm at an age now, my hair's graying up nicely and I now wear glasses, which really, really helps. People look to me as a person that's supposed to know what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so really I'm forcing myself, probably over the last 5 years, I've really forced myself to only work through others.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the first big piece for me on this, is to be in the life stage that I'm in, regardless of where my skills or my financial ability is at. And to just be accepting of that. The second part of that filter is, because I'm at a life stage where I'm working through others, I really have to get clear about who is going to be slaying the dragon. If there's no slayer of the dragon, then there's no yes for me.
Yeah.
And I made that mistake twice. I was looking at, there are these IV clinics where you can go and people put needles in your arm and they put vitamin C and some other things into you. We did a whole two-year due diligence process on bringing that to Australia and being the first to really bring it here in a systematic way. But neither myself or the other person were interested in being the CEO.
Yeah.
And it was just such a waste of 2 years.
Yeah.
Because it was absolutely a go, but I should have been spending my time finding the slayer of the dragon.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to there and realised that, it was too late. Those people were out doing it for themselves, or they've gone on to other things. And so that's the second big one for me, is that I have to make sure that the human elements are in play before I get all excited about the theories and does this model work? In the absence of human beings to execute on the model, specific human beings that I can name and that I can ring and say, I'm thinking about doing this. Are you in or out? Just based on the sound of it. Until I've got the team together, there's no party going on.
Yeah.
It's just me fantasizing about how awesome I might be in the future.
Yeah.
The third piece about it is am I in a position personally to speak to 1,000 customers? Because if I'm not enthusiastic about having a conversation with 1,000 people about this, direct frontline users of whatever we're going to create, then I'm not showing up the way that I need to show up. And that's for me the consistent piece that hasn't seemed to change from when I was the sort of the willing acolyte when I was an adolescent, and then the slayer of the dragon in my sort of 20s and 30s, through to now the befriender of the dragon is what I call it now in this age group. Until I sort of got there, I wasn't really able to sort of show up directly in that.
That's cool. So those some really good filters there. Mate, one thing I really want to ask you is, you've got a super entrepreneurial and busy wife as well. So you're both busy people. You got a young family. With what's going on with Sarah's business and with your ventures, how do you guys stay balanced and connected with your kids and things like that?
There's marrying well, and then there's just marrying impossibly well. I was standing there was this little sort of tiny cafeteria at the law school back in the day when the university could afford to have little cafeterias all around. Now there's a vending machine there, I think. And I was overhearing this girl, she was just this young lass, and she was talking about how she was going to the prisons to volunteer and talk to refugees to better understand their needs and to see if she could help them become Australian citizens and to help them through that process. And this was the same girl that was bucking up in criminal law class and was clearly on track to be, the partner of a top-tier law firm. This total brainiac that I thought, here's another capitalist go-getter, another legal eagle that's just going to run to the top and take all the money. And it really took me aback to hear that she was volunteering, and she was, I guess, putting purpose ahead of making money. And I'm like, this is one to watch.
Yeah.
So I did what any sensible sort of adolescent would do, and I started pulling her hair and asking her to have sex with me. And it was decidedly unsuccessful in terms of getting a date.
Yeah.
But it really, I think, sparked off a really fun friendship where she was setting me up with her friends and going out with my friends, and it was all a bit of a mess. But there was a lot of love there.
Yeah.
And I remember at the end of uni, I leveled with her. I took her aside and I said, we're probably not going to see each other that much now that we're not in uni, and you're going to go off and become this amazing legal eagle and marry some judge, and you're going to have an awesome life, and I'm going to go off and do whatever I do. But I want to understand the foundation by which you and I can ensure that we remain friends until I die. She said, well, you could ask me on a date. I'm like, I've asked you 1,000 times. She said, you've never asked me on a date. And so I asked her on a date, and it's just amazing to think back to, that's 20 years ago, half our life really. That really, by being authentic with her and saying, you're the sort of person who I want in my life forever, and I don't care what that looks like, I'm just willing to fight for that. That really is the foundation by which our relationship thrives now.
Yeah.
Is that it doesn't really matter whether we're getting along with each other on any given day or if someone's in a bad mood or not. There's this foundational understanding that, and Sarah says it to me often, she says, I'm here with you to the end of the line. I get really emotional when I think about that because it's not I love you, it's not you're amazing, there's no condition on that. She just consistently returns to me and just says, you can show up as terribly as you like indefinitely. I will always just accept you as you are. And that might not necessarily mean that we're married forever either.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that I'm just absolutely 100% confident that we'll be friends and we'll stick up for each other without judgment and counsel each other honestly until the end. Now, I guess that's like the underlying piece. At a practical level, it's all about systems, rhythms, and accountability.
Yeah.
We run our family in the same ways and using the same processes that we've used to run our businesses.
Yeah, okay.
Like this, my kids know that we're doing an annual roundup and setting up a family vision board and individual vision boards on this school holidays because it's the July holidays. That's when we do it, and we get out and we draw vision maps and we set out goals, and every week we have a family meeting. Once a month, that's a deep dive family meeting where each person speaks to their goals. We do all these things that allow us to function as a working unit, and we're very, very intentional about the cadence around that.
Yeah.
I don't care if my kid's goal is to, pick bigger boogers out of their nose. Whatever the goal is fine, but we never miss that cadence.
Yeah.
The other piece is that we're very, very clear about who owns what. So I just don't touch legal documents in our group at all. Like I don't know what I've signed.
Yeah.
I just accept that if Sarah wants to fleece me, she can.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, all of the stuff that happens in terms of the plan for creating a powerful next generation of children and really showing up powerfully in their development, Doesn't mean that Sarah's not doing it, but she trusts my judgment on that.
Yeah.
And she follows my lead on that.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the bit that's really delicious in our relationship is at any given time, one of us is always clearly the leader and the other one is the follower.
Yeah.
But it's flicking every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So she'll come into one of my businesses and she'll start, yelling about stuff. My team are looking at me going, you're going to let her do that? I'm like, absolutely, because it's to do with compliance or it's to do with legalities or whatever.
Yeah.
And the same thing, I walk into her businesses and I just start yelling at the sales and marketing team, just going, what are you doing? And Sarah just takes a back seat. She's like, you poked the bear.
Yeah.
This is his area.
Yeah.
I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
And I'm not even touching the way that he does it. I've yelled at people in her teams and they leave.
Yeah.
And she just accepts it.
Yeah.
Because it's my jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, creates a really deep foundation of trust and respect that's really fun as well.
Yeah. You know your roles and the accountabilities around those roles.
And if there's grey area, just straight away communicating about it. Who owns this?
Yeah.
Why do you own it? I think I should own it. And we just keep talking about it until we figure it out.
That's cool. Mate, you mentioned your mentors a bit through our chat. Tell me how you go about choosing who you have as your mentors.
I don't seek to have mentors so much as I seek to be open to learning. And I think that served me pretty well so far. Often people don't mentor me for very long and they don't need to mentor me for very long. They just say, why are you doing it like that? That makes no sense. Do it like this. And I go, okay. And I just do it like that for 30 days. And I get what I get and I don't get upset.
Yeah.
And they observe it and go, he didn't get anything of what I expected him to get, but he actually did something with that. And I think that's really inviting for a lot of people that are at that sort of more legacy leaving stage of their life, is to feel like they can have a quick impact on someone and they're open and teachable.
Yep.
The other thing for me is, I still remember the first time it really happened to me and I noticed that I was doing it, was I was at a legal function with Sarah and there were all these partners of law firms and I'm a young budding DJ really at that point. I didn't really have a great even business then. And one of the managing partners, as it turned out to be, of one of the big firms came up and said, oh, you're Sarah's husband. What was your name? David. I've heard that you're starting a business. How's it going? And I had nothing to lose. I said, it's going terribly. My parents are school teachers and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I was educated in 𝗵𝗶𝘁, which was good for street smarts, but it's got absolutely no hope of me learning how to string a sentence together or being able to put that into action. And in that moment of vulnerability, he just froze. He's a partner of a law firm. In a law firm, generally, the thing is just pretend that you're awesome at everything for the whole time. Particularly maybe 25 years ago, more so than today. But he was frozen in that moment, and he just sort of froze, and he just walked off. He didn't say anything.
Yeah.
But about 3 weeks later, Sarah says, "Oh, this guy, he wants to talk to you. He's got a contact he wants you to talk to." In my moment of vulnerability, I opened him up, and he selected for me this guy. I think it's 𝗟𝗓𝗄, and he was running some pool stuff. And he took me aside and he mentored me. Yeah. And he pulled no punches because I was just completely open. And then he linked me up with another guy called Dave McDonough who runs a plastics business. And these guys just kicked me up the bum. And just by showing up open, people could spend 2 or 3 sessions with me and just say, well, I've given you all the juice that I've got. Why don't you go and talk to this person or this person or this person? Yeah. And the other thing is I just keep showing up as the least capable person in the room, vulnerably. And I think people in that life stage just open to that and just go, here's a guy who, he's not amazing, but he cares. He genuinely cares. I'm going to throw him a bone. And people just keep doing that for me. And it's no longer surprising to me. I understand why they do it. Yeah. But I never cease to be grateful for the people just globally who just happened to me just before I came in here. You heard me talking on the phone. And I'm talking to someone who's saying, I'm thinking about expanding this business into Australia and I want to talk to you first. Out of all the people in Australia, I want to talk to you first and I want to talk about this because he knows I'm not going to say yes. Yeah. I'm pulling for a no. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm going to do everything that I can as an entrepreneur to sort the guy out. And also, he's at a life stage where he knows there's a mentoring opportunity for me in that. Yeah. And I'm asking him questions and he's saying to me at the end of the call, what do you need? And I'm saying, I need this and I need this and I need this. And he's going to hook me up with people that can help me with the specific things that I need to show up better for the specific little tribes of people that I'm putting myself out to serve right at the moment.
That's great. Mate, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Living the dream.